House impeachment managers are set to present an article of impeachment against former President Trump to the Senate today. Senators who will act as jurors will be sworn in tomorrow, but the trial is not expected to begin until February 8th. Law enforcement officials are also looking into threats against Congress members ahead of the impeachment trial. 7,000 National Guard members will remain in Washington through mid-March. And ABC News political director Rick Klein joins me now to unpack it all. Rick, how do you expect this impeachment trial to play out?
Yeah, Diane, we have a little bit of a break, which gives Joe Biden a chance to start enacting some of his agenda. But when it begins in the Senate, everyone kind of knows what the evidence is, and it'll be presented. A lot of it is on videotape, and a lot of it, of course, involves witnesses who are themselves members of Congress. The intriguing thing will be how many Republicans support it. There's only a small handful who've indicated an openness to supporting impeachment. The presumption is that most will not support it. A little wrinkle just this morning, though, is that Senator Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, is one of the more moderate Republicans, sometimes clashed with President Trump, has announced his retirement. That is going to put a lot more pressure on him to potentially be a vote in favor of impeachment and barring President Trump from holding office, and is going to just ignite a new little fire inside the Republican Party over who should be the successor in states like that. We're seeing it already begin to play out in primaries. Senators feeling a lot of pressure on this looming impeachment vote.
And do Democrats risk losing Republican support for things like COVID relief or immigration reform by pushing ahead with the impeachment trial?
Yeah, I mean, they've given themselves no choice at this point. And I think from Democrats' perspective, they say that there needs to be accountability. The process was such that they voted while he was still president. But there's a number of Republicans who perhaps forthrightly, perhaps disingenuously, saying now that that impeachment and an impeachment trial is divisive and it cuts against the themes of unity that we heard just last week from Joe Biden. Again, whether they're being sincere or not, it's certainly something that some Republicans are going to cite. There's no question that having this trial of a former president, which has never happened before, is going to ignite some partisan passions, will further some of the divides. But again, from the Democrats' perspective, someone has to be held accountable for his actions. And in this case, it's President Trump, who the House has already impeached with a bipartisan vote.
And Dominion Voting Systems is suing President Trump's personal attorney, former President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, for defamation, seeking more than $1 billion. Now, the company says Giuliani and his allies deceived millions of people into believing Dominion had stolen their votes and fixed the election. So what exactly is Giuliani up against here?
Well, they're up against a large corporation that has a vested interest in seeing that there's justice served and that people who spread lies, misinformation are held to account in a major way. We already know there's a push to disbar Rudy Giuliani, but Dominion has been the subject of a series of bizarre, meandering conspiracy theories involving Hugo Chavez and Venezuela. No basis in reality. Some news organizations that spread some of this misinformation have issued full retractions, full on-air apologies. Rudy Giuliani has not backed down, though. He continues to maintain in the platforms that he's given, including on his radio show, that he has evidence and that he was right in what he said. Dominion, one point they make is that a lot of the things that Rudy Giuliani said that were false about their company, he didn't say them in court. He said them publicly because, in their view, he knew that they wouldn't stand up in court, that they'd be slapped down by a judge. But this is an interesting test case of misinformation, disinformation, and political lies to see how Rudy Giuliani responds to this and if there's some kind of a major legal settlement involving Dominion.
And speaking of cases, Rick, the Supreme Court today dismissed a case over whether former President Trump violated the emoluments clause by illegally profiting off of his presidency. What exactly was this lawsuit alleging, and why was it thrown out?
Yeah, this is one of those other constitutional areas where we became experts. Emoluments is kind of a fancy, centuries-old way of saying profiting, making money off of just some kind of a favor. And there are two emoluments clauses in the Constitution that are roughly similar, but basically they say that a president can't profit from either federal or state government entities or from foreign entities while he's in office. Now, President Trump said many times that he was going to put his business interests in a blind trust. In fact, that never happened, and he always retained a business interest noticed he had a very high-profile property right here in D.C. that got a lot of business from foreign entities as well as from state governments over time. And in this case, you had some of the local state governments like D.C. and Maryland saying, we want to test this. Now, by tossing it out, it's basically the Supreme Court saying they don't want to touch this very political issue in a highly charged partisan time. They're saying it's moot because the president's no longer in office. From the perspective of the plaintiffs, they wanted resolution on this, but they're hoping that at least there's a precedent set about how seriously courts will take the emoluments clause. Some people thought this was going to be a pretty easy case against the president if it pursued. Now it's going to end as the Trump presidency ended a week ago.
And Rick, it's early days, but the ABC News Ipsos poll shows high approval ratings for President Biden so far, both for his response to the coronavirus and confidence in his ability to unify the country. Can he translate that into support for policy wins?
Yeah, this is fascinating because there is broad support for the themes that he put out. You know, upwards of 70% plus support for the concept of unity. A lot of folks, we played even during this poll a clip of his inaugural address, and people generally across party lines thought it was genuine. But the catch comes when you start to get into some policy areas. And when you look specifically at some areas that impact immigration, like the Muslim ban, the border wall, that's where partisanship comes back. And it comes back pretty quickly and pretty fiercely. And those are the limits that you come up against. It's one thing to have people buy into this generic notion of bipartisanship and unity. It's another thing to say, okay, here are some specific areas. The president had conversations with a bipartisan group of lawmakers over the weekend. Doesn't appear that he's got a broad agreement on his COVID deals. So look, the reality is that Washington is a polarized place, and that didn't change from last week.
All right, Rick Klein, our political director. Always great to have you, Rick. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.